get the necessary. What time usually get out from the afternoon class?
3.
3?
2 or 3.
3? Not 3:30?
No.
Okay, so this definitely will get out at 3 o'clock. We might not finish the pharmacology, but you'll see the pathophysiology at least part. And I skip some of the in the pictures, and if those are self-evident, we can look at them later on. So we will cover first the pathophysiology of the adrenal gland, including the stress reaction, and we start the pharmacology. If we don't finish it, not worry, we will continue tomorrow morning. Just one more question, because I see that not only Mina is missing, but the Farahs, they were not here today. No. Yeah. I have to compliment also, I like especially Carmen's signature. That's the only one which is readable. All the others are scriptures. She always signs it.
You can't duplicate it.
Okay, Isa. No,
Yes.
please.
Okay.
Start it.
Learn to do right, seek justice, encourage the oppressed.
Very generic, very useful. Who was Isaac?
Prophet.
Prophet. When did he live? Roughly. Was one of the early or the late prophets? The late. There were 500 before Christ. I don't want to overgo, but the Old Testaments are very to all religion. New Testaments are not. How many are Christians? So those are minority, right? So that's why so I have respect for them. So this is relevant to all. As an okay. So what we covered on the endocrine. Especially I have emphasized that the adrenal structure, adrenal gland, the cortex has 3 layers, all producing different hormones. And you should know this not only by name, but what hormones they are going to produce, so they put that in there. And they are important for the steroidogenesis and classification naming of steroids. Again, to avoid this all kind of patients given steroids, of course, you went to glucocorticoids. And please remember this absolute thing which just some people forget, that the anti-inflammatory effect of cortisol and all glucocorticoids is separated from the pro-inflammatory effect of mineral corticoids. We will briefly touch on the evolution of the stress concept, because of course the adrenal gland is the crucial element, and the distinction between distress and eustress. And of course, because it's pathophysiology, we will cover the adrenocortical hyperfunction, and if it is producing too much aldosterone, it's called Conn syndrome, and it's producing too much cortisol, it's either Cushing disease or Cushing syndrome, depending on the origin of the main stimulus. If it is excessive ECTH production by the pituitary tumors, this is Cushing disease. For any other reason, excessive cortisol or glucocorticoid is called Cushing syndrome. After hyperfunction, we will touch on the cortical hypofunction, and there are 2 important names. The acute sudden collapse of the adrenal cortical function is called the so-called Vanderbilt-Friedrichsen syndrome. It's essentially hemorrhagic infarction of the adrenal cortex. It's rare but not unheard of. Every year, especially in children with meningococcal sepsis, when they get meningitis and just treated on time, they get dissemination of the meningococcus. And for one reason or the other, the adrenal cortex is very receptive for this. And every year there are 2-3 children die, and they use here a shock in the children's hospital of Orange County due to this lateral syndrome. The chronic deficiency of adrenal gland due to autoimmune diseases is called three layers of the cortex. And please pay attention to this. You can asterisk to the three layers and to know what are they producing. So the zona glomerulosa is outside layer of the cortex. The zona fasciculata is the largest one in the middle. And the zona reticularis is the inner layer, very close to the medulla. So here are the same with the histologic section of the realistic. Glomerulosa producing aldosterone, fasciculata producing cortisol and androgens, and zona reticularis inner cell producing androgens or small amount of estrogen. So please remember these names and classification because this is critical. Why we are not talking about medulla? Is this not part of the endocrine system? Because this is the cortex. I keep talking about the yellow part and the inner part is called the medulla, the center. Why we are not talking about it? Because it's not part of the endocrine system. What is produced in the medulla is the center of the adrenal, which is about this size. What is the other stress hormone when you said you have high or low?
Cortisol?
High of cortisol, but more frequently used. High of adrenaline. Adrenaline, which adrenaline is the rest of the world. United States is hormone. Adrenaline, what is the name here?
Epinephrine.
Epinephrine. Epinephrine. So this is produced in the medulla. So this is not part of the endocrine system, but it's part of the neural system. But in stress reaction, that's the reason stress is so bad, because both the cortex and the medulla are hyperfunctioning. The medulla secretes too much of adrenaline rush, or epinephrine, and the cortex producing cortisol. So this is a crucial interface between the two layers. And it was not overly saying my teacher that essentially he was the first actually not only to discuss the stress reaction, but a few years later on in 1941, 43, 44, described the first modern classification of steroids. Nobody ever did it before. And he named them very simply according to the origin. If it's coming from the adrenal cortex, he called them corticoids. If they were coming from the testis, testosterone, testoids. Or if it comes from the follicles, follicoids. If it was luteal, corpus luteum, and the ovary, luteoids. Now in the modern nomenclatures, these are essentially became hormone testoids and androgens, or estrogens, or progestins. And the corticoids remain well functioning, but again, you could say corticosteroids, but even that is unnecessary because corticoids mean steroids produced in the adrenal cortex. But you know that the difference is the glucocorticoids, anti-inflammatory, pro-inflammatory. This is just a quick overview. We are not going to dwell on this, but just to know the sequence of events that under the release of corticoid release producing hormone, which stimulates ACTH into the adrenal cortex and stimulates the synthesis of steroids. I mentioned in the review in the pituitary gland that cholesterol levels are increased under ACTH, and cholesterol is the precursor of all the steroids. First it was the pregnenolone, and it shifted to progesterone. It is various enzymes, especially 21 beta hydroxylase, produces deoxycortisol, which is under the influence of 11 beta hydroxylase, produces corticosterone or aldosterone, which is the main mineral corticoid. If it goes to pregnenolone, goes to 70 hydroxypregnenolone, that goes down to deoxycortisol, and essentially the final product again under the influence of 11 beta hydroxylase produces cortisol, the main glucocorticoid. As all the functions go from the testosterone and some of them are the deficiency are listed here. We are not going to test you on this, but just know that these multiple hormones and enzymes can be regulated. The most important is actually the 11 beta hydroxylase. When you put on the 11th position, hydroxyl group and the 17 beta hydroxylase in the early stages. The others are not very important. Just to know the three pathways and the enzymes. If the anti-cortisol is pure action of beta hydroxysteroid hydroxylase. This is just an explanation of how these glucocorticoids are related. Most of you know about cortisol, but cortisol is not a very active metabolic function. In the liver, it is transferred into cortisol. So what's the difference between cortisol and cortisol? Anybody can see the difference?
The ketones.
What's the difference?
Ketone and alcohol.
Yes, alcohol, radical, which carbon?
The ketone hydroxide.
11. This is steroids, 11. Start 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11. So there's different. Cortisol is a keto group, and cortisol and hydroxide. Cortisol is also active because it's in the liver. It's transferred into cortisol, but the most potent is cortisol. And I don't understand why on shelf right at an elevator you could get cortisone, but not cortisol. Then cortisone, that's produced by. Probably it's easier to commercially produce than cortisol itself. But if I would be a pharmaceutical company, I would use cortisol because that's a fine alcohol. And in the kidney, it transfers the other way around. So this is just illustrates the anti-inflammatory actions and how these are affecting multiple cytokines which are regulating macrophages and immune functions. Both cortisol and cortisol are doing this, but cortisol is a little bit more potent. The main take-home message is not all the corticosteroids are anti-inflammatory. Only cortisol, the glucocorticoids are regulated. So, since we're talking about stress, let's just talk about the definitions. Anxiety or stress cause such a stress and struggle to choose a term. Initially, we see he called another name, general adaptation system, because he thought stress is a term in the physics, which is, of course, used in physics initially. Stress and strain, very similar, so he didn't want to use that. But after he got a lot of pressure, and although his first publication of stress was in 1936, by the 40s and 50s, he created a definition which is valid, and today stress is the non-specific neuroendocrine response of the body. You will see why I emphasize non-specific and neuroendocrine. Because, again, especially those who are finishing this course at this university, the disciples of Anseli, don't tell that stress is not well defined. Stress is well defined, if you know it. It's not true that the poorly understood. No, it's not poorly understood, very well understood. The only difference are twofold. That Anseli introduced the name stress as a short label for his non-specific reaction. He was criticized that he does not distinguish between the agent which causes stress and the function and the reaction. So here he introduced the word stressor, the agent which causes to trigger stress. And stress is the function. And in the very end of his life, in his last popular book in 1974, he used the same definition. Stress is a non-specific response of the body to any demand made of it. So what's the difference? He left out neuroendocrine. Not because it's incorrect, but by the 60s and 70s knew that during stress reaction, it's not only the neuroendocrine system is affected. we know that the stress, your heart is beating fast, you can run faster because that's a defense reaction. So it affects all body. So we're very smart. Left out of the neuroendocrine, and stress is the non-specific response of the body. So this is the most modern, scientifically accepted definition. And don't tell them the action. You can educate anybody that this is stress is non-imperative. So here is another critical element, the specific and the non-specific stress effect. And this illustration actually from Hans Selye. I just modified it and put in a color. Any agent, physical, chemical, biological, psychological, has a specific effect or non-specific effect. Specific effect, I think, food, with sugar, and insulin, blood glucose go down, virus, bacteria, cause infection, fear and joy, stimulate ACTH also. So these are specific effects. But in addition to that, most of these agents, especially in large amount, excessive food, large dose of insulin, causes this non-specific effect, and this is the stressor effect. And this is the neuroendocrine effect or the ulcerogenic effect, affecting the body, and the body is modulated of course by genotype and endocrine and endocrine system. What would be the outer conditions, nutrition, environment and drugs. Again, the take-home message at the end. Stressor is the agent which causes stress. That stress is the phenomenon, the response. So here is his very first publication in July 4, 1936. His Nature is a good scientific journal. This is the best. If anybody publishes in Nature or Science, you can make it great. So you could ask anybody here how many papers they have in Nature. Nature is the most difficult publication, very old, but very demanding. He published the first paper in 1936 and the follow-up paper in Science. Where is Nature published? In which country?
Canada.
England. And Science is Washington. So these are the most difficult, most prestigious scientific journals. This short article, but it describes the 4 experiments in animals showing that the rats exposed to excessive heat, exercise, injection of toxic compound to produce this reaction which you will see in a minute, and he called it general adaptation syndrome. First time he used the major booklet, it was the first monograph that Hans Selye published, and this is his signature, that it was published in 1950 in Montreal, in his institute. After that, he dropped the name general adaptation syndrome and just used stress later on. And here is the other major contributions of Hans Selye, why it is connected to another famous scientist, Walter Cannon. Walter Cannon was a chair of physiology at Harvard before my time. Actually, at the time of Hans Selye, he was a little bit older and died earlier. And he told that all this non-specific reaction involves only the catecholamines. The Cannon completely ignored the adrenal cortex. So the contribution, the organ-specific contribution of Selye was crucial because he was the one who detected the role of glucocorticoids and mineralocorticoids, while of course the catecholamines theory came from Walter Cannon. What's the other big difference? So when you want to measure chemically stress reaction, why do we measure cortisol and not adrenaline or catecholamines? Have you ever heard of somebody measuring catecholamines? No. Why? Because the half-life of catecholamines, including epinephrine, norepinephrine, very short, very little. So they don't remain in the circulation. The half-life of corticoids, especially cortisol, cortisone, is about 3-4 hours. So that's the reason that in stress reaction we measure cortisol and not catecholamines. And this is a complex reaction, of course, just illustration of the stress affecting the adrenaline. The brain stimulates the release from hypothalamus which is again illustrated here. Now, what is the typical structural reaction of the stress reaction? Selye described still in his original paper in the 30s and the 40s. This is a triad. Adrenal hyperemia, blood flow increase, enlargement, hypertrophy, gastric ulcer, which are essential hemorrhagic erosion, and thyrolymphatic atrophy. Illustrated here. On the left are organs from control heads. These are renal glands, arch thymus, lymph nodes, and the inferior part of the stomach. Under just 4 or 5 days of heavy stressor, the adrenal glands are enlarged, hyperemic, as there is a dark, and the thymus and the lymph node shrink. That was his first demonstration that this is probably has an immune component. The molecules were not known at that time, so we could just measure the weight of thymus and lymph nodes accompanied by hemorrhagic erosion. So this is the classic triad. Adrenal enlargement, hyperemia, GI ulcers, and the thyrolymphatic ulcers or erosion. Now, in the late 60s and the 70s, it became known that ACTH is released not only in negative conditions when you are in fear, when you are angry, but also when you are extremely happy, extremely pleasant. For example, there are good studies showing that if you getting an Olympic medal or any other award, your ACTH will go up also. So it was really not said in 1970. We published an extremely interesting paper, and maybe for later on time in the time to explain how we discovered it. But he called this the original concept of SERI. If it is extremely unpleasant, with negative stress, and positive stress if it is under positive names, under positive influences, happiness. SERI always liked to create new names. So when he read, and he knew personality, I believe also is from the Karolinska Institute of Stockholm. So SERI attached distress to the negative and eustress to the positive effect. So this is just new names, but you know that under these conditions, ACT is reduced and cortisol is elevated, both under distress and eustress. So here's just another illustration for National Geographic. And a photographer, and this is a real picture, and he is chasing them. Of course, this is a distress because you are fearing for your life, or a cat that is angry with the dog. Eustress, then you have completely different relaxation. And although the main issue here is that our adrenals cannot distinguish between distress and eustress, but our brain regions can. Adrenal gland is as complex biochemically, structurally, but a very primitive organ. Whenever ACTH hits to it, it produces more cortisol. But 3 main areas make the difference, which we now know that the mechanism is essential. First, the prefrontal cortex, the hippocampus, and the amygdala. These are the only areas which differentiate between distress and eustress. And the polygram mediator, which is becoming now on the BDNF, brain-derived mediator factor, which we know that the gene is overexpressed in eustress, but repressed in distress. So again, you should know about the distress and eustress and the 3 main areas which we differentiate. You see, it's not the brain cortex. This is not a big deal. The essential lower part, prefrontal hippocampus. So the final definition of distress. Distress is usually perceived as negative, but this has been under special modulating conditioning factors also stimulate reactivity. There are many examples from art and sciences where distress, negative effect, stimulates production. Anybody recall any famous musical composition which was created under very difficult conditions? Beethoven, that's But actually, Beethoven was, when he created even the Ninth Symphony, he was pretty stable condition. But what was another equally famous composer who was much, was on the central deathbed? Mozart. What was the famous composition he did before he died? He was literally dying. Anybody has heard about the Requiem? Requiem. Requiem. For everybody makes a Requiem. And anybody see, I remember simply about 15 years ago when the famous movie we read in Warwick, Amadeus. Anybody heard about it? If you have free time, come on, just look at it, put an Amadeus, it's almost free. It describes the life of Mozart, who was struggling with financial issues at the end of his life. He died at the age of 35. And the last piece was ordered from a rich gentleman in Vienna. And he requested a special piece for his wife. And Mozart was literally dying in the bed and composed his famous last piece, the Requiem, out of which is the most famous is the Lacrimosa. So, yes, distress is usually negative, but not always. And eustress, on the other, it may be short-lasting and biphasic. And the goal is to create a lifestyle which contains more eustress than distress. And don't forget what Sally used to say, stress is the salt of life. You cannot get away with stress. This is we have to learn. And there are good studies now published recently in the British Medical Journal, which was picked up even by economists, that make us students stress an elective course is a possibility of health. And stress can make us happy if you understand how to do it. The big composers, Mozart, Beethoven, are just a huge example, but they show that students who took stress related course, to understand stress, perform much better on exams than others who did not take it. So let's go to the diseases. Adrenocortical disease is the hyperfunction to the hypofunction. Hyperfunction, of course, is the one which diseases which creates excessive corticoids. This is due to the hyperplasia of the adrenocortical cells. Again, hyperplasia increased number. The cells are the same size, but more numerous in the adrenal cortex. And this could be primary, unknown. Usually in any medical conditions, if it is primary hypertension and so on, it means that we don't know the hypertension. On primary hyperfunctions, we just don't know the origin. Secondary, when you